shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree, standing by the riverside. We shall not be moved.
Thank you very much. The first speaker is Eileen.
Oh, is it?
Eileen, a historian who will tell us the circumstances of the historical times when Macquarie ordered the massacre of Aboriginal people in Sydney.
Okay, well, I'd just like to say, first of all, we are here on Gadigal country. I'd like to acknowledge and give my respect to the elders, including Teresa, who is here today, descendant of the people involved in these events. Lachlan Macquarie became Governor of New South Wales in 1810. He was the first military man to be made governor. All the previous governors had been Navy men. Macquarie set about invading previously uncolonised Aboriginal lands. One of them was the land of the Darrawal people, what is now southwest Sydney. Another was the Blue Mountains, the land of the Gundungara people. Macquarie made a tour of the cow pastures and the Georges River region just 11 months into his governorship and decided to open it up to land grants. He named the area Ayres after the family estate of his wife Elizabeth, and he named Appin after the location of that estate, and he named Campbelltown after her birth surname. As regards Gundungara lands, in 1813 Macquarie authorised John Oxley to take stock for the first time into the Bargo Brush. Also in 1813 he authorised Blacksland, Lawson and Wentworth to find a crossing of the Blue Mountains, and in 1814 he commissioned William Cox to build a road across the Blue Mountains. White invaders meant the displacement of people, the felling of trees, the ploughing of earth and the pollution of waterways by hard-hoofed livestock, and the usurpation of Aboriginal sovereignty. Naturally enough, the Darrawal and Gundungara took action to defend their lands, their sources of nourishment, their way of life and their sovereignty, and it was joint action between the Darrawal and the Gundungara. And they didn't do it too badly. By early 1816, settlers were abandoning their farms in the cow pastures. There were two serious incidents where the Darrawal and Gundungara directly clashed with posses of white invaders and sent them fleeing in panic and disarray. One was at Malaysia on the Nepean River, and the other was at the Razorback Range down Camden Way. It was these clashes that prompted Macquarie to order the expeditions that are referred to in the text that Stephen posted on the Lachlan Macquarie statue. On the 9th of April 1816, Macquarie issued 3 sets of written orders for military expeditions against the Darrawal, Gundungara and the Aboriginal peoples on the Hawkesbury, who had recently strengthened their opposition to the British invasion as well. As the text Stephen posted says, Macquarie ordered the expeditions to take prisoner all Aboriginal people they came across en route after they marched from Sydney. This was for reasons, as he put it, of secrecy and dispatch. In other words, it was to stop word getting to the Aboriginal warriors that these troops were on their way. He used the word prisoners of war. He also told the expeditions to open fire on any who refused to surrender when called upon to do so, or who made the least show of resistance, or who attempted to run away. He also specified that the bodies of the grown-up men killed in these encounters were to be hung up on trees in conspicuous situations to strike the survivors with the greater terror. And those terms above were indeed put into practice. At dawn on the 17th of April, Captain James Wallace came across a group of Aboriginal people down near the Cataract River. It would appear he did not call on them to surrender, but attacked directly. According to his later report, his detachment killed 14 people, 11 of them women or children, and 1 an elderly man. There were no British casualties. The bodies of 2 or possibly 3 men were strung up on trees at McGee's Hill, which is down past Appin. 2 women and 3 children were taken prisoner. In the following days, another 16 people were either captured or surrendered. They were kept prisoner until June 1816, when most of them were released, except for one warrior, Darrawal, who was sent as a convict to Tasmania, apparently without trial, and 4 children, who were sent to the native institution of Parramatta, which Macquarie had set up in 1815 as a way of stealing Aboriginal children from their families and indoctrinating them into imperialist ways. 2 of these 4 children escaped from the institution a couple of months later. Macquarie's war against Aborigines, or rather this specific campaign, continued for the rest of the year of 1816. And of course, it continues today.
Next, we're going to hear from Teresa from the Darrawal and Gundungara land. So let's welcome Teresa. And thanks, Eileen. So my name's Teresa Monta and I come from La Perouse community where I grew up. Our families carry the memory of this massacre in our oral histories. We refer to places and people in the naming of our children. I understand they've been doing memorials at Appin Massacre, and so something is being done about it. I do not understand why this man is going into court today for simply stating what is public record, what is actually a primary source documented in the history of our people and of this country, other than to say that it's okay for Australia to demand of other people in other countries that they be just and that they protect people's human rights, while at the same time pointing the finger the other way and sweeping everything that happens here underneath the carpet. So basically, I think that the injustice is that this man has been brought into the court today. I think that particularly to the people who are connected to this massacre site, which is in Sydney, which is the point of an invasion. And when people walk past our people on the streets, okay, you are walking past people who have been dispossessed. Can you imagine if someone came and ripped you out of your houses and took your livelihood away from you and put you in missions and reserves and told you that you couldn't get a feed, and then in fact started to use your country to run stock in cattle on, that you in your hunger need and go out there to get a feed, and then you're hacked down and dogs are set upon you. This is what happened in our communities. And it's not being said to make trouble or incite violence. I find it farcical, I find it a shame of my own country. In my lifetime, what I have seen, Lech in Poland, I've watched the whole thing with Mandela, and immediately they began to have a truth and reconciliation. But here it's a shame, it's a stain. How can we actually move on? It's not just about talking about things. There are real living people, the descendants of the people from this campaign who have been impacted. So I agree, I'm glad to be here. I think that this little group, I'm very proud of you all for standing up and saying something. There are people who are everywhere, scattered all over this country, along the east coast of Australia, out there around Botany Bay and Wollongong and out in the Gundungara itself, who this campaign concerns. And if anything comes of all of this, I hope that they start to get more closer together, they come stronger together, because it's their voice we want to hear. Because it's them that we want to witness to. And we want to witness to them in the right way, not a little hidden thing with me media and everybody turning their backs, while they actually benefit, people benefit from the loss of our land here. And we have been what? Having our heritage and our legacy that was passed down to us ripped away from us and then criminalised on the streets where the police actually chase our children around and put them on lists because they might be budding criminals, lists that they keep in each police station. And then instead of helping them to maintain their education or give them diversity programs and things like that, they slip us on a fast track into the juvenile justice system. And if Australians, everyday Australians, really want to do something to help, then you will make this issue not go away. They can't just point their fingers overseas and the old Scott Morrison, he can't say that this doesn't happen here. Scott Morrison is related to a lady. Her name is Mary Gilmore and she's a well-known poet. And she wrote a poem called The Killer of the Black, which documents her being placed or being around in a homestead where they were gathering to go out and kill us. Kill us, my family, our friends, our relations. This is nothing to be ashamed of. This is something to be dealt with sympathetically and with humanity, and to invest the dignity back to the people that this was perpetrated on and help them come together and witness, and not in a way that people are ashamed either. There is no shame in this. And when people march down here to the cenotaph and go down into the Anzac Day Memorial, okay, they were in a war defending what? Our liberties. These people, Yaranderi and Jewel and Canamble, Pemulwuy and Tapiri, all these people had the right to defend their borders because this is our country, and it always was and always will be, and we have not ceded. We have not ceded. The only way that you can deal with this in the light of what's happening in the world, but you can buy time, I suppose. They can all buy time until we die. And so an incremental genocide is going on. I understand there was no term as genocide until they made the human rights, okay? But before that, they did have a law so that the big powers in the country all around the globe could be in a position where they could negotiate the use or the colonisation of lands between England and Spain and others, right? And that law states, before the genocide law, that we have to either be wiped out or people have to settle. And there was no settlement. There was only terror, terror, terror until we deal with this. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Therese.
Everyone, Rachel has to go. I think the next speaker, Stephen, you're going to say something, is that right?
Oh, well, I did have a humorous poem, but I'm not sure if that's really...
Okay.
But,
Yeah, let's lighten the probably...
Oh,
well, maybe we should...
No, one more.
Yes.
One more thing, media, with all your cameras all put down there. Shame on you. What about what happened with the Juukan Gorge just recently?
Yeah.
Hey? What about cutting down our birthing trees? You know? A reporter, the principles of a reporter to report on the truth. And if there is no reporting on the truth and only one side is said, then there's propaganda going on in this country. See? Everybody walking backwards and forwards there? You have to look at what's happening, and if one of us is brutalised and traumatised, the people have to call it out. In a democracy, a fair democracy, or we're going to slip into something that we don't want to be in if we're not already there.
Okay. Well, quickly, a few lines. Hello, my name is Stephen. I used to be a nurse, but now I terrorise colonial statues and write appalling verse. I was vaguely aware of Governor Macquarie, never seen him on a screen, but then I read a quote from him in a newsletter from the Greens. To soldiers his words were law, to take the natives captive and to make them prisoners of war, and if they resisted, from their lives to set them free. shoot them, and leave them hanging from a tree. This is not written on Macquarie statue in Hyde Park. Strangely proportioned, huge hands, quite frightening after dark. It says he was a Christian and good in every way, unveiled 7 years ago, not 100, really just yesterday. I think we should demand it tell the truth or perhaps be swept away. I remember when we lived in Austria, from where my dad had fled, but he didn't fear that the police would raid and shoot him in the head, as happened in the Northern Territory. But an Austrian official had visited, and to my mother was bullying and uncouth. I remember when Dad got home, he just about hit the roof. It must have reminded him of how many met their fate, of the Anschluss of Kristallnacht in 1938. In Austria's defence, Nazis are not immortalised in the arts. There is no statue of Hitler in Vienna, and none of Himmler there in Graz. But my friend Darrawal from Darwin said, you only have to lift your eyes to see a statue of someone responsible for your own people's demise. Statues of invaders regardless of the blood they spilled, or rather probably because of the number of blackfellas they ordered killed. So I stuck the piece of paper to Macquarie, just a scrap. I thought I'd cycle home with my dog and shopping, take a nap. Then suddenly on Collins Street, 4 police cars, well, maybe 3. Something like the last scene in Thelma and Louise. At first I was taken aback, but then I thought, this is great. I never even realised I was such a danger to the state. I ended up in Surrey Hills lockup and began to understand the panic and despair of Paul, a Larrakia man. He had been in the dock next to me at Day Street police station in the city. He had been in Surrey Hills lockup before, and I thought, what a pity. But then I was sent there too. No communication, no clock, no private toilet, and no natural light. No respect or dignity, a strip search, handcuffs, an absence of human rights. My cellmate next time, Vince, and this was not our fault, we were sprayed with violent language, and he suffered officer assault. That's it, Goulburn Street Police lockup, underneath the station, where the thug officers wear no identification. If you think it was horrible and boring, you're right, I'm not impressed. In a real way, it was torture. Even the cockroaches looked depressed. That was a joke. I think with Black Lives Matter, we are all on the rise. In so many ways, we must decolonise. No more blown up shelters, desecration of the people and the land. Corporate men in Parliament, so white, corrupt and bland, with fires and coal in Parliament. Cruelty, the order of the day. Only friendship and solidarity make this a place I want to stay. We do not have to live like this. There is definitely another way. What I had at Surrey Hills was not much, just a taste of something that is truly a national disgrace. And if Murdoch and Macquarie and other propaganda makes me feel bereft, I cannot write a poem without one plug for Green Left. There you go. I think Australia, what the Australian elite is doing, I think of an old-fashioned word, is a sin, a sin. I love how the Timurees say it though. To resist is to win. Thank you.
Everyone, but he is managing to do a unique thing, which is go to court on his birthday. It's his birthday today, everybody. Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Stephen. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Next speaker, I think, is Vivian. Vivian Pozol from Jews Against the Occupation.
Thanks, Jim. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I'm privileged to be here to support Stephen. With Jews Against the Occupation, we're opposing the colonisation and dispossession and seizure that's ongoing today in Palestine. And it's such a power process we have happening here in Australia. And this is what we don't recognise enough. that this was a seizure, this was stolen land, and we should, those of us who come later, should be bow down in gratitude that we live on this land with the longest standing human culture, continuous human culture in the whole planet. And this is a great honour, and we should be replacing the Union Jack on our national flag with the Aboriginal flag, and that would make much more sense if we were truly to look at the history and the heritage of this country. If we look at Australia today, if we look at the way 600 odd cops to protect these statues, to stop truth-telling, and here we are, we're calling for truth-telling, we're calling not to criminalise free speech, telling the truth of the history. And if we look at what's happening with the refugees and the abject cruelty and the absolute lawlessness of what's going on there, if we look at what's happening with Assange, and because he tells the truth, and no law is covering what's being done to him, the cruelty and the whole extreme disrespect of civil rights, liberties in general in this country. We are in a dire straits, and this very expensive action to stop Stephen Langford telling the truth, as it says here on the speaker, exactly what the words of Governor Macquarie said. And for this, he has been taken to court, and all our money.
This is my best birthday present ever. From Noam Chomsky.
There's something strange, even surreal, about the idea of defending the right to free speech. It is almost like defending the right to stay alive. What makes us human is the capacity for thought. And infringement on our right to express our thoughts is an assault on our essential nature. The burden of proof is misplaced. There is no need to defend our most fundamental rights. It is those who seek to abrogate those fundamental rights who must bear the burden. And it is a very heavy one, a challenge very rarely met. And this is from the great Noam Chomsky.
I've got two other messages of support. I think I've still got time. A progressive society is not one which considers property rights of greater importance than human rights. Freedom of speech must be acknowledged for what it is, a human right, and it must be treated accordingly. And that's from David Shoebridge, who couldn't be with us today. A constant supporter. And this is from Sister Susie Connolly. How many times has this matter gone to court? And how much money, this is called expensive free speech, how many times has this matter gone to court? And how much money is the Australian taxpayer forking out to prosecute a man, that's me, who put an A4 piece of paper on a statue? This farce is testimony to the soulless machinery of state bureaucracy haunted by its failure to assimilate the indigenous peoples and using every ridiculous excuse at hand to try to prove some sort of power over people's thought. The police and the courts needn't bleat about the pressure of work if this is how they spend their time and budget. Straining gnats and swallowing camels. That's Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. And I've tried swallowing a camel, it's pretty hard.
Okay.
Maybe someone from the Assange group?
Thank you very much, Stephen. As we know, it is easier for a rich man, for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man go to heaven. So there we are. There's another quote from the Bible from my school days.
A few words from the Assange group.
All right. Okay. A couple of words from representing. What's your name, sorry? Tony from the Free Assange group.
Okay, this is just another example of the perversion of the Westminster legal system upon which our legal system is based. Julian Assange is being held illegally, immorally, and being tortured now for 21 months in a British cell against the Magna Carta, habeas corpus, you name it, going back over 1,000 years. And here we are in a colony, and a man has stood up and he wants the true history of this country to be revealed. The true history of the persecution of the original inhabitants and owners and custodians of this great land, something to which we white settlers should be proud, and instead we're trying to smother it. We're trying to crush them and their 100,000 years of culture into oblivion. This is a travesty of justice beyond all travesties of justice. And I stand here proudly beside Stephen as he stands up for the rights of the Indigenous peoples of this country, the original nations of this country. Thank you, Stephen.
Free Assange!
And free Assange!
Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
Free
Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Bravo!
Bravo, thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony. So I think we hope that we don't have to have a rally to free Stephen Langford. We're assuming that justice will correctly take its course, and the case should be dismissed. Exactly. We're all agreed on that. Dismiss the case against Stephen. Dismiss the case against Stephen.
Dismiss the case against Stephen. Dismiss the case against Stephen.
Dismiss the case against Stephen.
Well, come and visit me in prison, one or the other. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gotta go. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.